All right, we got a couple of things for you in this video. We are going to talk about Trey Harris. We're going to talk about what he is doing and how he is absolutely turning heads. I know I talked about this like 4 or 5 days ago, but more news just keeps coming out. So we're going to talk about how he influences the offense and how this is actually the best news for Herbert. And I'm going to give you some very interesting stats from him, dating back to when he had elite wide receivers and then to last year where he had none, and then the back half of the year he had one elite wide receiver, and that was Ladd McConkey. So as he developed through his rookie year, and then after we talk about that, we are going to talk about the story behind the story on how the Chargers ended up on Omarian Hampton, and it's kind of a cool inside look at how when we think people are seeing these guys for 4 or 5 months the season before, the scouts and stuff like that, no, it goes way back, even before that. So let's go ahead and talk about who this Chargers rookie, what he's doing. First, you see here on Twitter, Chargers rookie wide receiver Trey Harris could emerge as wide receiver 2 after being an early standout at OTAs. That came out, and I'm like, okay, well, they're usually not wrong there. But then there's other things that you're seeing. NFL Mocks came out with more rookie news and notes, and their very first takeaway about as far as players, what they're doing for each team, they talked about Trey Harris. They said LA Chargers second-round pick Trey Harris is already turning heads in OTAs. A lot of turning heads from this guy. He's made multiple contested catches and flashed the ability to stretch the field with a few big plays. When healthy last season, Harris was one of the nation's most productive receivers, hauling in 60 passes in just 8 games. He's expected to pair with Mike Williams and Ladd McConkey to form one of the strongest receiving groups the Chargers have had in recent years. Okay, so first, let's break down a couple things about Trey Harris and why I think he will continue to be productive. I really strongly do believe that he's going to continue to be productive because that's all he did in college. In 2024, he did nothing but produce. All right? He was limited to 8 games. And in those eight games, he got 60 catches for 1,030 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns. That's insane. In the SEC. All right? He became only the 6th player in Ole Miss program to crack the 1,000-yard mark. And he did it in 8 games. He got second-team All-American in only 8 games. He was a semifinalist for the Bolitnikoff Award. That goes to the best receiver. In only 8 games. In his Rebels career, he had over 2,000 receiving yards, and 15 touchdowns, 114 catches. All right? Not just that. Other things stood out too, going beyond the numbers, all right, or into different numbers. When PFF, they love him. They gave him an 89.7 grade, which was the 3rd best among wide receivers with at least 50 targets last year. He was so reliable. He was also explosive, all right? He led the SEC in 30-yard catches with 12, all right? And he also was tied for the SEC lead with 40-yard catches with 7 in only 8 games. Have I said that yet? And then his 5.12 yards per route run. That's not per catch. That's every time the dude ran a route. So the quarterback could have thrown it to any player on the field. But he averaged 5.12 yards per route run last season, which was the best among all receivers. And his 149.5 passer rating when targeted was 3rd in the country. So basically, here's what I'm saying. Everything he did was good. He made his quarterback better. Jackson Dart ended up getting drafted in the 1st round, and he just did it consistently. He did what you hoped Quentin Johnston would do. That's the way that looks at it. So here's what I want to do and what I want to talk to you about. And these are simple stats, but I'm going to make a really big point with it. All right? These are simple stats. These are Justin Herbert stats. All right? In 2024, this past year, it was not his best as far as yards, right? But it wasn't bad. All right? But 23 touchdowns to 3 picks. His best rating in his career came here. Think about this sophomore or his sophomore year here, his second year in the NFL. He threw for over 5,000 yards. Everybody knew as a rookie, and then his second year, they're like, this dude is going to be something special. And yet his QB rating was lower those years than it was this past year. In those years, he was throwing to weapons everywhere. Everywhere. This past year, Ladd McConkey. That's it. He didn't have a running back to throw to consistently out of the backfield. He didn't have a consistent tight end. He didn't have a number 2 wide receiver that was a deep threat going down the field. He didn't have all of those things, yet still put together the most efficient season of his career. Imagine when there's more talent added. And speaking of more talent added, there was a great story over on Chargers.com about how Omarian Hampton was drafted. And I thought this was so cool. It talked about how they all got together the night before. And assistant GM Chad Alexander said of the get-together, like, I just had a feeling that it was going to be Omarian Hampton. And he's like, how do I tell Ortiz, right? Like, how do I tell him? And it turns out that he was the one that was driving home with him, the GM. And he's like, I think he is the guy. And that went back so far. All right. They said they were fired up to get him. And then it went in and it started talking about how one of their scouts went all the way back to his freshman year. He went to North Carolina, his region made up of 8 states: Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and New York. All right. So he had a huge region, but he decided to go to a North Carolina versus Florida A&M game. All right, in person in 2022. It was the very first college game of Omarian Hampton's career, and the dude went for 101 yards. First UNC true freshman to hit 100 yards since 1946. And that is when he was on the radar, and then they kept tabs of him, and they said even then he looked like a dude that was a junior, even though he was only a freshman. These are some of the cool things that I think we have to remember. This is going again, across multiple regimes. This is why it's important to keep some people from the old staff and the old scouts, right? And sometimes, they were talking about your assistant GM and how he had scouted him in person back when he was scouting for the Jets. Like, all these crazy things that people get brought together, and all of them came to the same exact thing. They believed Omarian Hampton was an absolute elite talent, and how they tend to go early. They were worried he was going to get gobbled up before their pick at pick 22. So really cool to see, and just kind of fun to hear about when your rookies are either showing out. Wide receivers and corners, this is the time for them to show out in OTAs. And when training camp gets started, which it will start earlier for you, and when the mandatory mini camp starts, that's when you're going to see a little bit more stuff from the linemen and the running backs, because they can do a little bit more. All right, hey, thanks for watching. If you like what you're seeing, hit that subscribe button. We want to be your go-to place for Chargers content. Again, we are Lions fans, but we followed that man from this place, and we love what the Chargers are doing. All right, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.